here with our own specific flavor of humanness. We need that. We need to be around the melting pot of different flavors. Otherwise, everything's going to be really bland and boring and not taste good.
And welcome everyone to another episode of Humanity 2.0 podcast, where we are interviewing humans about humanity. Imagine that. Today's guest is Ashana Kaiulani. Well, no, help me out, girl. Save me.
Kaiulani.
Kaiulani. It reminds me of the show Caillou. Remember Caillou?
Oh, yeah. No one's
Kaiulani.
ever said that to me before.
I'm so happy that it was me.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to Humanity 2.0, where we mess up people's names, but we care about humanity. Now, you're a reclamation coach, you're an author, you're a podcast host, and you're a speaker. All of these things have that same level of responsibility. So I can imagine that you are just very aware when it comes to the information that you put out. Have you ever had anyone come to you and say, hey, I don't agree with this, and how did you respond to that?
That is a really good question, because I think in my formative years and stepping into this role, that actually happened a lot of the times. And I think it was because I wasn't as aware. I wasn't as aware of how I was coming across. I would be speaking what I felt was the truth, but it wasn't really keeping the other person's dignity in mind. And so I think it wasn't so much what I was saying as how I was saying it. And I think that was an important lesson for me in alchemizing how I do show up and how I do speak to people, because now I recognize that my truth may not be their truth, and my truth might still have some tweaking to do. I have more to learn. I don't ever know anything. So I think in the beginning where I would have gotten, well, where I did get very defensive and a lot of times would just walk away from people and end those relationships and just quit. I think now it's an invitation to deeper connection for me, because I'm able to ask now, what about it didn't resonate? And was it the information, or was it the way that I said it? Was it the way that it came across? Did it feel a certain kind of way? And I think that is important in how I'm showing up in the world, rather than just putting information out there and people will take it how they take it.
Sounds like you have really done a lot of work on yourself, but also listening to the feedback and growing from that feedback. And I think that's so worth the journey, and it's proved to be successful for you. So that's great that you do listen and take from that. But
Yeah.
I would argue that you do know some things, you just don't know everything. And I think recognizing that you don't know everything and then being open to whatever comes to you, and learning more and just absorbing and growing, but not even just growing, but adapting and pivoting, and your message and your overall program, your arc, just becoming stronger or evolving further into something totally new, and then being comfortable with leaning into that. I think all of those qualities are what become such an enriching program for you as a speaker, as a podcast host, as a reclamation coach. I think that you already do that. So you're on a good trajectory, is what I'm trying to say in a very long, drawn out way.
Even though we forgot what got us here, we made it here.
We made it. Welcome.
Yeah.
So, are you a good human, and why?
Okay. Today, I genuinely can say, yes, I feel like I am genuinely a good human. The why, I think, is because I stopped judging my perception of whether or not I'm a good human from whether or not other people thought that I was acting as a good human. But there's kind of a nuance here, because if everyone around me is saying, "Oh, that's not a good person, like you don't want to be in cahoots with her," there's definitely something to listen to there, in my opinion. Like I want to know why. Like, what is it that I'm doing that's rubbing people the wrong way or harming people, or and I may act on it. I may not right now. That's okay. It's information to take in. But I'm not judging whether or not I'm a good human based on that. And I'm also not judging it based on people's perception of what a good human is, because that's their perspective, right? And that could be informed by things that hurt them in the past, things that they're still carrying forward with them and are not aware of. And the same is true for me. My former perception of myself as a good human or not was informed by a lot of things that I carried forward with me from my past. And I believed for a long time that I wasn't. I thought that I was lacking. I thought that I was somehow evil inherently and was going to be out here harming people with the work that I'm doing in the world. And that was the biggest hurdle that I had to overcome in what I do. And I think meeting myself in that depth, in that low place that we don't want to admit to, I think that is what helped me see, okay, I genuinely care about this. I genuinely desire to be doing good in the world. Sister, you're a good person. Sometimes you do things that aren't perfect, and that's okay. But don't let anyone else tell you that you're bad. Like, you just met your own heart, and it's good. Let that be so. Let that be true.
That is the sweetest thing ever.
It was very vulnerable to share.
Oh my god, thank you. That was beautiful. That was really awesome. It must be the southernness.
Oh my gosh. This is when people will say, "Bless her heart."
I hope not. In Texas, that means something totally different. You don't want them to say
Right.
that. It's not good. But I'm really blown away by that. I really like that you talk about the dark place because there is a dark place. And for you to think that you were inherently bad and then to transition and get over that hurdle, that's amazing. But I want to know what was the catalyst that got you over that hurdle that turned things around for you?
Gosh, gosh, gosh. Well, for one, as I as I am a strong proponent of, I reached out to people who I trusted as much as I could trust people in that moment. I wasn't always the most trusting person. So, it was easier for me to connect with strangers and with clients than it was to maintain close relationships, and that's something that I still work on to this day. I'm aware. But I reached out and I let those 2 people know I'm really struggling with something right now, and I know that whatever you write back to me, I'm probably still gonna take it wrong, and it's probably still gonna fulfill that self-fulfilling prophecy that I'm awful. But I think it was that action step of reaching out and then seeing that for what it was. I didn't let myself see it as weakness. I didn't let myself see it as, performing for attention. All those things that I had convinced myself or allowed myself to be convinced were proof that I was awful. I was like, "No, these are bids for connection, and that's not a bad thing." How can I be saying to people in the world, "Reach out. Don't go through it alone. You need connection. You need support. Healing is relational. We can't do this in isolation," and then not do that myself. So I think I listened to what I deeply believe is true for other people, and I think that it was because those 2 people came back to me and said, "What would you tell someone if they reached out to you right now in the way that you're reaching out?" And they both said it in different ways, but they were able to reflect that back to me that, like, these people think I'm good. These people think that I would give good advice in a situation like this. I trust these people. So let me take that medicine of my own and go with it. And it was a slow climbing up out of the hole from there. It was. It wasn't an overnight process. But each little chip that I chipped away was kind of showing me, like, these are the parts of me that are me, that I do in my way, and that's to be celebrated. These are good things. I genuinely love myself now because I met those parts of me.
By those parts of you, are you talking about the positive parts or the negative parts?
Both. All of the above, because the perceived so-called negative parts, those were the vulnerable parts. Those were the hurt parts. Those were the parts that I had been convinced were so awful that I couldn't exist and those parts be true. Because I would be a nuisance, I would be a bother, I would be too much, I would have ulterior motives, I would just be looking for attention, I would be a know-it-all, insert here, right? I heard a lot of different things that I absorbed over the years, and I inadvertently would take actions that would prove those things, so they were cemented. But those are the same parts of me that I love in other people because they're human. So how could I hate them in me and then so genuinely love them in other people? That was the piece. That was the piece that kept me believing that I was awful, and it's because that wasn't in alignment. It was a lie. Once that thread was, like, pulled and disconnected, everything kind of started to click into place, and it was like, "Oh my gosh, this was the big, bad, awful that I thought I couldn't face." And I faced it, and I'm still here, and now, I'll make mistakes. I'll say something stupid and I'll start blushing, or I'll be really vulnerable and I'll start blushing. And it's like, that's what I do. That's who I am. I'm still going to share it anyway, and I'm still going to be authentic anyway.
Yes, I love that you are authentic. It shows. I think anyone that's authentic and living, just themselves, being completely unapologetically themselves, it shows and it's so freeing. I'm that way too. And like you said, we're very similar. But I enjoy meeting other people like that because it's like you can breathe around them, you could just be your weird self, let your little freak flag fly, And then the people that are very reserved, or maybe they're just not there yet, they're not ready yet to kind of meet those parts of them, good or bad. And it's okay because everyone's on their own path at their own pace. And so there's nothing to be said wrong about those people. But I feel like when those particular people are around those like us that are completely open and just, free, I think that they kind of get a little bit of inspiration or a little bit of warmth, a little bit of energy that tells them, like, hey, you have the right to be free and be open and be unapologetically yourself too. So I think that being around various types of people, it really does a service to everyone around us. You mentioned earlier also about, I want to say it was like healing or being around people and healing around other people. You said it in a way that was really awesome. I'm butchering it so
Mm.
terribly. But you mentioned, what was it that you said?
Healing is relational. We can't
Yeah.
do this in isolation.
Yeah, the healing is relational part. That was so profound. So thank you for sharing that. It's perfect. I think of the fact that there have been instances that I've witnessed where there are people in very, very bad spots mentally, and they're all collectively in the same place. The only way that they healed was from one another, as opposed to, the doctors and the programs. It was really the people around each other and telling their stories and listening to each other. So there's a lot of that going on, but that community and that relating to everyone around you and being able to share commonalities and be yourself, I think that's very powerful. And I think that's what heals people, as opposed to, all of the programs, but the people around each other. And then people like you that facilitate that environment.
Yeah, that's the hope anyway. And not all of it, I love the way that you put such an optimistic spin on everything because not all of it feels that way sometimes. And we have to remind ourselves to go towards that, go towards the things that feel good. And sometimes healing in relation, maybe the people around you aren't like minded and they're causing some friction. You guys are rubbing up against one another and it's uncomfortable. But here's the thing, if we are just in comfort all the time, we're not pushed forward towards growth. We're probably going to stay in that comfort because it's comfortable, it feels good.
Right.
And so, really celebrating the differences, like you said, being around different kinds of people and hearing different perspectives is everything. It's not just like, oh, that's good. That's a perk. That's like,
Hmm.
we need that. We genuinely need that. That's why I believe my philosophy of sorts is that we're all here with our own specific flavor of humanness. We need that. We need to be around the melting pot of different flavors. Otherwise, everything's going to be really bland and boring and not taste good.
Now I'm hungry, but yes, that well said. Oh my goodness. I don't know I don't know exactly why I'm so positive. I mean, if I had to really put a point on it, I really couldn't tell you. I think that there's something, I don't know, some kind of magic factor where I went through like the worst things that you could possibly imagine and then still being this way. No idea. Like it's just something that is inherent that has always been there, but despite going through experiences or traumas or really bad situations, it's always been there. It just came out over time on its own. And then when you feel safe and you're like, okay, I can grow into myself now, or maybe it's the opposite where you experience such trauma where you're like, you know what, this isn't what life is about. I need to advocate for myself and get the heck out of this. And then now I can be myself. And so it really takes form in different ways for different people. But for myself, like I get that remark all the time, like, oh, you're so positive about everything, or you lived through like a dumpster fire, how in the heck are you so positive? My ex, he would tell me all the time, like, if I was you, I'd have like, lit the world on fire for what happened to you, but you don't do that. Instead, you try to heal it, or you try to help it, or you try to give it different perspectives on how they could be, so that way they could be better people. And some would argue that the reason why we do that is because if you come from such a hurt place, you don't want other people to be hurt either. And so you want to help them and make them feel better so they don't ever have to feel what you felt. So it's really a mixture of all of those things, but I could never ever pinpoint like where it comes from. So it's just there, but I'm glad it's there.
Yeah, it is like magic, and it's genuine too, like, in listening to you speak, it comes out of you naturally, and it's like, "Wow," like, this is broadening humanity's perspective every time you speak of, like, "There's a plus side here. There's positive here." It's beautiful.
Thank you. That's so nice of you. When you hear the word humanity, what's the first image or story or feeling that comes to mind for you?
Hmm. This is gonna be probably interesting. I'm sure all of the answers that you get for this are interesting, so I'll just give that disclaimer. This is a very Ashana answer. But humanity, I immediately picture, like, this mother figure cradling children, but it expands into a bigger picture of, like, all humans and all animals and all children, and just this, like, overt sense of nurturing and closeness, and that means protection of vulnerability, and so that's what the picture folks for me. And it's interesting, I don't actually see pictures in my head. That never happens for me, but I feel it deeply. And so I can put words and pictures to it. And so I specifically get this sense of like children and sheep. I don't know why sheep are standing out, but this nurturing motherly presence that's just kind of shielding over the vulnerability and letting it exist, not making it go away.
Hmm. That is interesting. Do you have like a personal experience that kind of ties into that? Or is it just really kind of abstract and that's just what you saw, what you felt in the moment when you heard the word?
That's just what happened in the moment. I love my mom. We no longer speak, but I will say that it wasn't a very nurturing relationship. I actually wasn't very attuned to any adults at all growing up, so no personal connection there really. It's just I think that's the view of humanity that I have formed in my own process and my own journey, just that vulnerability should be both protected but also maintain its dignity and it's allowed to hold space. Like it needs to exist. It's a very important part of our humanity.
Hmm. I wonder if maybe your projection of what motherhood or what being a mother should be is somewhere wrapped in that, you know?
Probably.
Maybe. Because, where you're seeing children, you're seeing that mother figure, and I agree, when I think of humanity also, I think of, this presence that's cradling or taking care of or letting them be okay or providing the environment for them to be okay.
Mhm.
And, collectively, we all want to be okay. And so there are those of us that will protect each other or create programs or coaching programs that will help other people to be okay. And so maybe it's wrapped up in there somewhere.
Like
Your
you said,
mother
helping people get what you didn't get or helping people not have happen to them what happened to you. Very
Yes.
similar, I think.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Your mother story, not mother story, but mentioning your mother reminded me of my mother. She passed away last year, and growing up, she wasn't there. She was there, but she wasn't there. So I raised myself, and I'm like the 6 of 6 kids. And so there's a very interesting childhood, but then when I grew up, she was around in my 20s. And normally that's not when you really need your mom. Some would argue you need them your whole life, which is technically true in certain situations. But when I was in my 20s, that was when she was there the most. And I had moved to Washington State. We lived in Seattle for a while. I moved back. And then I needed to be somewhere where I just was closed off from everyone because it was a lot that went on. So I needed quiet. I needed darkness. I needed rest. And so she was like, "Oh, yeah, just come over here." And I stayed with her for a couple months, but that first month I slept the whole time. And I only went out at night. I only went out with her. And it was one of those things where I just didn't want to be around people like at all. I had gone off to do this really, really awesome altruistic work and work with this like nonprofit. And then just things like fell apart and I felt like I failed. And so I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm done. I'm done with everything. And so she was very nurturing in the sense that she did nothing, but she was just there. So whatever I needed, she would, help facilitate. But it wasn't like a there. It was more like, I'm just going to stand here. And when you need something, let me know. And that
Yeah.
was the perfect way for a mother to be. I mean, mothers know, right? They kind of know sometimes what you need when you need it, but then sometimes they don't. And they're people too. So I mean, we have to remember that at the end of the day, they're people too, just like us. They make mistakes, and we sometimes put things on them or treat them a certain way negatively, right? Because we expect them to be more when in actuality they're just imperfect humans just like us. And
Yes.
so when I went to college, before I lived with her, going back in time, I remember confronting her about it, about not raising me because I figured, well, I got nothing to lose. I'm leaving on a bus here and then later today. And we went to Denny's and I asked her, why didn't you raise me? And she said, "Well, you were doing it yourself and you were doing a good job, so I figured you didn't need it." She's like, "You just didn't need it. You didn't need me. You were doing it fine."
Mm.
And I was like, "Whoa." I was like, "That's a crap answer for one. Like I did need a mother. Even if you were just there to hang out and supervise, I needed somebody and I had nobody." So, yeah, I let her know though, like that wasn't okay. And then over the years we were fine because I got to have it out and just say this is what I feel, and that was the worst thing you could do, but in a way took up for myself, and that's why I was so independent and built on that. And I guess maybe that's what made me stronger, was having to take care of myself and, be someone once said it's like being an adult, when you're little. And so you don't have that childhood, but you become an adult at an early age, and then you just kind of, you live and you build on that. So before she passed, I saw her more, and we would have talks, and it was really nice to be able to kind of come full circle, where even though she didn't take care of me when I was a little kid, I took care of her when she was older, in various times, because I live 5 hours apart from where my family lives. And so it was a nice kind of resolve to be like, okay, even though you screwed up, even though I screwed up, everybody screwed up, we're all screwed up. It was nice to kind of have, I guess, like a common ground, and to be two people at the end of the day versus just, mother and child. Like at a certain point you become just two people that are related, but then you have these bonds or these stories and things you can learn from each other. So it was really interesting. But anyway, you're mentioning your mother reminded me of that.
Yeah.
Mothers, right? Are you a mom?
I am. Yeah, I've given birth to 8, but 3 of them were surrogate, so I have 5 of my own.
Do you think about your mom when you watch yourself taking care of them?
Ooh, that's a really good question. For the most part, no. I don't. I spent so much of my life without my mom, and also so much of my life wanting to be with my mom, even though my mom probably wasn't the best thing for me. In my mind, she still felt like the lesser of 2 evils when it came to, like, foster care and abusive home situations. So, for a long time, my entire life did revolve around my mom, and she also has borderline personality disorder, which was really painful for me as a young child living with her. And so I think when I reached adulthood, there was this fierce independence in me where I really wanted to be my own person and figure out who that was. And so in having children, I think that I was so absorbed in having relationships with those children that I didn't really think of me or think of how I was coming across as a mother. And with the first few children, that was harmful because I fell back on relational patterns that I learned, especially in later years with my father, that are not the kind of parent I want to be. And then when I started to become more aware of how I was coming across as a mother, then the shame set in because it's like, oh my gosh, now my kids have these coping mechanisms and they're because of me and it's because of how I was acting. And so every day I was waking up to mother these children who were reflecting back to me all the awful things that I had done as a mother. So I had to manage that within myself and come to terms with it while still also trying to be a role model for them, having no clue what I was doing and still holding safe space for them while they process the same exact thing that I was going through within them in their own way.
Yeah.
So it was definitely there was no room in there, I don't think, to be thinking about my mother very much. I think because so many of my overt patterns were from my father, because I
Mm.
lived with him much longer and at much later ages. I think when I started to think of my mother was when I had to face the ways that I wasn't as nurturing as I wanted to be, because that was modeled for me in my relationship with her. I realized that I didn't really know how to be a mom. I didn't really know how to nurture children. I didn't wanna play because I had never gotten to be a child and play. It was
Mm.
so uncomfortable for me to play with my children. However, I looked back, this is after years of going through this healing journey in motherhood. I realized that I, in fact, did very much know how to be a mother because it was instinct. And I had been very, very close with my first child. I had just been in extremely abusive situations and relationships that didn't really hold space for that nurturing. It didn't really hold space for mine and my baby because I was making it about my partner. So I mirrored a lot of the same patterns that my mom had had when I was a kid. I made it more about the man than the child. And so that was where it more came into play of thinking of her. Now, as I'm getting older, I look like her. Sometimes I sound like her. So I'm thinking of her more as I'm getting older. And I did see her in a store recently. I gave her my phone number, so she has that.
Wow.
She hasn't used it, but it's there, and
Yeah.
so I think it's natural, though, as we do get older and we do start to see ourselves looking or feeling or sounding more like people, of
Mhm.
course, we're going to think of them.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think that's really great though that you pretty much extended that olive branch or made an effort of some sort to let her be part of your life, even if it's just on the phone. Like that's still a connection of sorts. So it's pretty amazing that you did that. And whether she uses it or not, you did that. So I would focus on that and be proud of that because that takes a lot for you, especially. Like, I don't even know the whole of it, but just hearing, little bits and pieces, like, I think that that was a big deal for you
It
and
it
you
came
did
after
that.
years of estrangement, so it's quite a big deal.
Oh, yeah.
Not even just personally, but, like, time passes. Things
Mhm.
happen. People change. I
And then
didn't talk
you
to her
also
in years.
get, like, a different perspective too on those things. Like, I could say, "Oh, well, she was out all night when I was a kid," but then I find out that she was at a bar because she was trying to afford medicine because we were all sick. And so she was working at a bar to get medicine money, and I wouldn't have thought of that. I just saw her go to the bar, right? And so I feel like as we get older, we learn so much more about them, but then also we're able to understand why they did what they did, or maybe that wasn't a great idea that you did that, but I see what your thought process was. That in itself is like healing, you know? Like it's its own form of healing for you when you kind of take time to think about why they might have done something. I really do. It heals something in you is what I'm saying is that it, allows you to, 1, understand, but then also it allows you to kind of, like, get over that pain and get over that anger that you have from way back when, so it's a good thing when those things come up, and it's good to just explore them and then let them go, right? So, yeah, mothers be mothering. But I'm sure you're a great mom. You seem like you are very loving, and even though it started in a different way, I've always been under the impression that a good mom will worry if she's a good mom or not. And then the ones that don't are the ones that are not. You always worry if you're a good mom. My kid came pre-baked, like I didn't have him. He was part of my ex's previous marriage, and so I raised him from when he was 7 alongside his biological mother, and then I adopted him at 14 when she passed. And so he was mine ever since I met him, but I always tell people, like, even though he came pre-baked, he was already mine, and I raised him and taught him a lot, taught him, how to survive on your own because I knew that he needed that. And I used to joke about it, but I said, no child of mine is going to call me at 2 in the morning and ask me how to turn on the dryer. So I taught him a lot of life skills. And then now he lives on his own and he's always like the responsible roommate, which is hilarious because before he was not. But it's interesting to see how they grow up and what they retain, what skills they retain, and what mattered to them that you taught them. So, yeah, very interesting. Now, we all have moments where another person or another soul reminds us of our shared humanness, right? Is there a person that you can think of that reminded you of shared humanness, whether it was empathy or compassion, and then how that changed how you view the world around you?
You ask really good questions. There's no way to come, like, pre-prepared for these questions. I really have to think about this one.
In a simpler sense, like when you think like, "Oh, man, that person is really awesome because they did this," or, "Something that so and so did really affected how I think of things because."
You know, my siblings and my children all come to mind, I think because I love them so deeply, so, like, a part of me wants to, like, look out farther and have a different person to talk about here, but I think this is a good place to kind of pay that respect to the people who have helped me and changed me so much, and I hate to, like, pick one of them over the others. I have my 5-year-old and my almost 10-year-old, they are both very deeply connected to what feels right and good and true in this world, and they have never been afraid to speak up for that, and I think that is the most beautiful and terrifying thing that is such a good example for people to follow, and I think it's really admirable. I think that it's something that we could all pay attention to, and we don't have to be as vocal as they are. We don't have to have the same beliefs as them, but they know these things to feel true within themselves, and I've always said that if you're looking to figure out if someone is being mistreated or if something needs to be revisited with more compassion, ask those 2
Mm,
because they're spot on every single time, and there's always underlying messages that they pick up on. And it's always a helpful reminder for me that when we foster that authenticity, when we allow that voice to be spoken and to grow, we step into it more and more and more. And that awakens a part of our intuition that to me is the center thread running through humanity, is that intuition that people do need help sometimes. They need connection always. And, mistreatment comes in many, many forms, and sometimes it does look like staying silent. Sometimes it does look like not, standing up for someone who you love and not revisiting a situation and saying, "Wait a minute, that could have gone better. Let's revisit that." So, big situations, small situations, it doesn't really matter. I really admire the way that they can kind of like have their finger on the pulse of a situation and
Mhm.
say, "This doesn't feel good. There's something here that needs more love."
That's amazing. I was gonna say, I was like, "Wow, they sound really intuitive." Okay, makes sense now.
Very.
Can you tell us the why behind the work that you do, and then tell us what it is that you do?
The why is because the world is still a big, big place. It's not getting any smaller. Sometimes it does feel like things are crushing in around us and everything is really tight and pressury. But I think the reason that it all feels so tight and pressury is because the world is such a big place. And sometimes we don't feel so big. Sometimes we still feel really, really small and tight and pressured and under resourced and not proud of ourselves, not strong enough, insert thing here that we believe about ourselves. And I just see that this is a problem that most, if not all people are going to see eventually and have to face it within themselves or within a situation or within their special corner of the world. And I feel like not having I don't want to say the tools, but some tools to feel okay in that situation and to make a decision and to take steps moving forward, I feel like that is like a slow erosion of humanity. I think that we have to be able to make decisions. We have to be able to take steps forward. Growth requires movement, and life means growth and movement. And when we're not doing that, when we're stagnant, we get depressed. We feel isolated. We don't even want to reach out anymore. We don't even have the energy to keep moving on. And I see that on that big scale, where before I only saw that on my small scale through my own trauma lens per se. I had tunnel vision and everything was about me because I was so small and the world was so big. And I think that we all experience that sometimes. So that's why I do what I do, because I realize that a lot of people feel the same way that I felt. And it's important that people know steps that they can take to get out of that or how to be a little more okay in it.
And then what you
And
do?
what I do. I left you with a cliffhanger. So what I do, I call it reclamation coaching, but it's essentially just helping you reclaim that autonomy, that authority, that sovereignty over your life, and that sense of self that guides you to the decisions that are right for you, the emotions that are true for you that maybe you weren't allowed to feel before because of painful relational dynamics or situations in childhood that kind of took that away, or you had to hide it, or you had to stay small to stay safe. And I help people, mostly women, really come to terms with what happened, the things that they've carried forward with them. Even if it's not an event, it's a feeling that you never quite measure up, or everybody else figured out something that you didn't. I
Hmm.
help them become aware of that in a way that kind of takes away the judgment, takes away the shame, takes away that this isn't okay, I'm other. And I really genuinely just hold space for people so that they can start to feel in real time in relation with another human that those things maybe they're okay. Maybe that's okay right now. And then we kind of segue into, how do you want to feel? How do
Mhm.
you want to show up in the world? Let's start listening to that voice. And so we're going to slowly, can I cuss on here? We're going to slowly unfuck the mind, because we've all been through things that were a mind fuck and we're like, oh my God, like I don't even really know who I am. Right. And then we're going to slowly learn to trust the gut. The voice has been telling you, the voice that has been telling you what is true for you. And
Mhm.
maybe it wasn't okay to do that because it would upset other people. Who knows what the reasons are? But from there, we're going to learn to really follow your heart. And that is the light that's shining in this world that is your specific flavor, your specific brand. And it's totally okay to embody that. It's actually better to embody that. It's genuine a show of love for yourself and for the world to embody that, whereas before, no, it wasn't as loving the way that you were showing up, but that doesn't mean you're bad. Like I thought I was evil. I thought I was bad. No, there's a reason for all of that. There's reasons for these patterns that we have, and that's totally okay. You get to choose how you move forward. You get to choose who you want to be every single day when you wake up, and no one gets to decide for you what your trauma was, how you process it, how you move forward, except you.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So that's what I do in a nutshell.
I love it so much. It's wonderful. I think that you have taken a lot of, what you've gone through and also what you've survived and finding your truth and finding your heart and your light, your flavor. I like that very much. I see how, you've kind of pivoted to being able to help other people in the same way, but your effectiveness also comes from your experience. So it's not like as if you're just a subject matter expert that read a book and was like, ah, we can talk about this. But your experience, your firsthand experience has made a difference. And so it'll continue to make a difference for people, especially those who have, similar situations or maybe just need that little extra. So I think that's amazing.
Thank you. And just to speak to that, I am finishing a degree in psychology and human development. And I say all the time, like I've learned a lot in school. I have, and I'm grateful for it. And I love that I know all these theories and all these theorists and all these, cognitive processes and developmental this and that. I haven't learned as much in school as I did in my life though. Genuinely. Couldn't even compare. And so I'm really grateful for both, and I'm grateful to be able to bridge both of those together and let them hold their own space in the room with a human who may not fit into either of those boxes.
Yep. I once asked a therapist if they themselves had, personal mental traumas that they had to work through, and then did that help them be a better therapist? Of course, the answer was yes, 100%. So she said that because she was able to connect with them on a different level, that it helped her to help them, you know, more than just saying, "Oh, let me diagnose you," and then
Yeah.
go over to this guy and take this, this, this.
Yeah.
So it was really interesting to hear that. And then also most therapists that they have therapists of their own, and a great deal of them have their own, mental issues that they work with and deal with, but they just happen to also want to help other people as well. And they go to school and, they become therapists or psychiatrists or what psychologists. And so I just think that's fascinating though. It's really interesting. And I wonder if you can kind of almost tell the difference between someone that has like some kind of previous background experience versus someone that's just purely, educational. I think those people tend to be very one dimensional and very dry. And you're just like,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Those are the conversations where you're like, something is not quite connecting here. And I have faced that in some of my other work that I've done. I've noticed when someone is really trying to like cause a person to fit into a box that they were taught in a book. And it's just like cannot compute in the moment because people are not meant to be fit into boxes. All of these ologies that we have, they're for sense and meaning making. They're for helping us understand the how and the why. We can give labels to things so that we can share them with others and people can say, "Oh, yes, me too. That makes sense." Okay, now we have a word for it. The human experience in all of its dimensions, I don't really think that we can put labels and words on that because we all have a different flavor, right? And so that's the beautiful living aspect of what we do in this world that can't be defined by an ology.
Hmm.
I mean, humanityology, humanology. We
Humanology.
could try.
Yeah, I like that. I also find beautiful that, all humans are so complex that what you may be today, you may not be tomorrow. I think that's the coolest
Yes.
thing ever.
Yes. Yes. And you could fit into this box today and then completely not fit into it another time. And then it's funny to think like people might be spinning out from that being like, "Oh my gosh, we have to come up with a third box." Like,
Maybe it's a jack in the box.
right?
Just jump out when you're done. If you could share a message with humanity, any message at all, what would that be?
Mm. It's that all of the things that you're probably afraid to share. You're probably ashamed to share. You probably hold very close to you, and maybe only a select few people know, or maybe no one knows. Maybe they were the things that you were shamed for, or made fun of for. Those are all the very unique parts of you that likely threatened someone else's sense in the past, whether that's their sense of self or their sense of safety. And I don't necessarily think that if you were bullied or shamed for it, that those are bad people. I think that assigning labels like that causes us to feel this us versus them and to hide ourselves and protect ourselves even more. I think that it just happened and it just is. And I think that whatever meaning you take from it moving forward, which could change tomorrow, regardless, those pieces of you are still there, and they're still very much important pieces of you, and every single one of them deserved to have dignity and attention and recognition and respect all along, not any less so at any particular time. And I think those are the important parts of you that you're actually here to share with the world, and that's why you have them. And I think that's a very scary thing to believe and to step into, but I wholeheartedly believe that that's true. And I think that you have the choice to step into them or not. You're not a worse person if you don't. But just I want everyone to be aware that they're there, and that like genuinely, because you're human, because you exist, because you're worthy of respect and love. You don't have to do anything to earn that. And that includes all those pieces of you, regardless of how you feel about them right now. I think that would be the message that I would share. And people may not believe that, but I believe it because I care about people, so I know it to be true.
That is an excellent message. I think maybe there might be people that aren't ready to accept that or believe it themselves, but eventually they'll get there or they won't. But either way, the fact that you put that message out there and that you said that today and someone else is going to hear it, someone's going to hear that and receive from it. So that makes all the difference and that makes the entire journey. Where can people find you, find your work, find your social handles, find your address? Not that, but where can they find you?
Well, I have this wonderful corner of the interwebs that I have called Way Home Wellness. So you can go to wayhomewellness.com. You can look me up on Instagram or Facebook, Way Home Wellness. I'm all over the place with that same name. I know, super original. But from there, you can also find my podcast, my work. And I mean, I'm on LinkedIn, but I feel like that's really more for business people. So I think that's probably your best bet if you're looking for me, is to look up my name or look up wayhomewellness.com.
Thank you so much for being on Humanity 2.0. We feel like we are better humans because you're here and because you're doing the work that you do. So thank you for all the work that you do. And for the rest of you guys, thank you for watching or listening to Humanity 2.0 podcast. Be sure to catch us next week with another amazing human. And this amazing human, be sure you find her. Oh God, see, I'm telling you, I need an app. Be sure to go and visit her links, thewayhome.com.
Wayhomewellness.com.
Darn
The
it.
way home was taken.
Well, Way Home Wellness. Okay, take two. Way Home Wellness. Yes. You can find your way home with Way Home Wellness. But yes, go find her on social. Go check out her stuff and her poetry. That sounds amazing. I'm going to go check that out. And be sure to subscribe and follow for the show. And also go to Podfest. Go to Podmatch. Links will be in the description. I always mess up that word, that sentence. I do, but not today. See you guys next week for another wonderful episode. Thank you so much for being here. It's been awesome having you, Ashana. And like I tell everyone, have the best day of your life. And for those listening and watching, be sure to be kind to other humans. See you guys. Humanity 2.0 podcast is brought to you by Vanessa the Vivacious Productions. Want to be a guest? Visit the link in the episode description for future guest opportunities. Ready to podcast like a boss? Join Podmatch and begin your Podmatch journey via the link also listed in the description. Subscribe to Humanity 2.0 podcast on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and more. Follow and help support the show by buying Humanity a cup of coffee via buymeacupofcoffee.com/Humanity 2.0 podcast. Above all, don't forget to be good to other humans. See you guys next time.